Welcome back, everybody. We're here for another episode of the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. I'm your host, Erik Stenholm, with my co-host, Joey Moore. A lot to get into in NFL Week 13. Obviously, Joey, we got to start at the top with the Niners making their statement and basically telling everyone in the league there's only one correct answer for who's the best team in the NFL. What a statement. What a win. What a complete victory by the Niners at the Eagles. Just an absolute thrashing, 42-19. We're back to where you were 6 weeks ago when you were like, no one can stop this wagon. You got to be riding on cloud 9.
Yeah, it might be cloud 99. That was probably the most fun regular season game I've ever watched. I mean, the first quarter was not fun. That's what's crazy. We were negative 6 yards and down 6-0, like a minute or two into the second quarter, and then came an absolute avalanche. And to just say the Niners, I wouldn't say they rolled out of bed ready to kick ass. Again, first quarter was not great, but I mean, from showing up to the stadium in the all-black attire, ready for the Philadelphia funeral, to running through their logo or their pregame, whatever they got going on. Mm-hmm. The Niners had bad intentions yesterday because they absolutely felt like they were a better team last year. Yesterday did nothing to NFC Championship. That game, the Niners could have won that 400-3. It doesn't matter. But as for this season, I mean, they are just mauling teams that are good. I mean,
right.
In Philly, 42-19. You hang 42-10 on Dallas at home, and maybe the jury's out on Jacksonville, but that was 34-3. Like, when they are healthy and playing well, I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl, but this is the best team in the league. There's no doubt about that.
And as you said earlier in the year, it's the best Niner team you've ever seen.
Easily. And they've had some pretty good teams. They offensively, Kyle Shanahan was sensational. That was one thing too. Jumped off the page. I mean, I think the Niners are better. This might be a hot take, but I think they're better than Philly at pretty much every position group. Mm-hmm. Maybe not by much.
Offensive line is close, but
well, that's the one I think Philly would still be like. I think Trent Williams is the best one, but then after that, you probably take the next. I mean, Jason Kelsey's right there. I mean, but I've been the first one to say I wish I had like the balls to say it before, but Brock Purdy's better than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was ass yesterday. Like, compared to his standards, because he's a really good player. But there were times he would take these, he had 2 awful sacks. And like I was screaming at the TV, like he's got 10 seconds to throw the ball. He's got all day, right? I rewatched the game. He is sometimes like 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Like, you're like, oh, that play was great. I'm like, well, of course, they snapped the ball at the 40 and he's at the 22. Like, I know it wasn't his best game. The Niners, Steve Wilkes was fantastic. He was equally as good as Kyle Shanahan. Yeah, I mean, and maybe the best part, I text you, there's so many games I'm just like, we're paying Deebo Samuel what? And that MFer ran his mouth for 9 months and backed it up like Cardi B at the club yesterday. Because, I mean, what an ass kicking. Just taking 5-yard in routes, screen passes, and running right through.
And running kickoffs back for like 30, 40 yards.
I think he was, because Ray McLeod was out. And so I'm like, okay, Ronnie Bell might return punts. And then he like kicked one out of bounds. I'm like, oh my God, dude, you're getting cut if you do that again. Deebo, I think it was the first kickoff that he received. He ran it out. He was 8 yards deep.
Mm-hmm. He had
like, what are we doing? Like, you don't think he thought, because they probably knew Ray was going to miss the game early. You don't think Deebo thought all week, I'm returning this to the house. It's Deshaun Jackson day in Philly. I am going full Deshaun Jackson.
Yes.
Returning this all the way back. and that's the thing. You know, there's probably, I mean, there might be 15 receivers in the league better than him, like consistently. Mm-hmm. Might even be more than that as a receiver, honestly. But The Philadelphia Eagles did not want to tackle, especially
You
him.
said it last week. When he has the ball in his hands already, he is the best wide receiver in the NFL. What happens up until that point, route running and catch radius and all that is subjective. But once he has the ball, he's the best yak receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, and for being a shorter and thick guy, although he's in more shape this year than last year, right? He kind of called himself out last year for being out of shape. But he's really fast. No one catches him.
Yeah.
Like he's the one where he broke the tackle. God bless Nicholas Moore, who had maybe the worst linebacker game you could ever have. He planted his foot. I mean, it was 45 yards to the house, like boom, boom. It was sensational. And then Brock Purdy. I don't know what people want to see. He started 0-4, just because they threw a couple balls out of bounds, whatever. So after that, he was 19 of 23 for 314 and 4 touchdowns. I know people want to give
the Eagles
at Philly. Like I don't know what else you want. He even lowered his shoulder on the first touchdown drive. It was first and goal. He evades the pocket, breaks the tackle, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. He's either going to get hurt or he's going to go full Rocky or Brocky into the end zone. And obviously he puts his shoulder, and it was his right shoulder too, and he gets hit out of bounds. But still, I just, the attitude that the Niners played with yesterday was,
That's
again,
exactly what you want to see from your team.
They haven't won a championship, but they have championship level players. And, like in the Bay Area, like out here, like we've seen, obviously none of like our teams, but like there's just some days like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, like they're going to kick your ass.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and, unfortunately being an A's fan with the Giants, like Madison Bumgarner's getting the ball. Like this is 9 innings of shove it right down the pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is going to be a shutout. It felt like that yesterday. I said this when they played Jacksonville. Sometimes I feel like they could have played the 07 Patriots yesterday, and they were gonna kick some ass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's again, it feels great until I start to think like this means absolute dick if this doesn't end with a Lombardi.
Right.
I mean, because
what a crazy position to be in too. Just being like, this is the best team I've ever rooted for in any sport. It's unstoppable. But oh my God, we have to win.
You know what's crazy? I was watching, of course, I'm on my week off of like work. I don't start the new job till next week. So I was just watching every sports program in America, just circle jerk the 49ers today. And I was watching one of them and they said like, oh, they're almost like unstoppable. And the other person, I forgot who it was like, no, seriously, they have not lost when everyone's healthy. Like since Birdie's become they don't lose. The only games they've lost has been when his arm fell off or this year when they had a couple guys hurt, which that happens to every team.
Mm-hmm.
But if they are healthy, which again, probably not likely.
But as we've seen, as you were saying, Purdy, Trent Williams, Run CMC, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. If those guys are all healthy, basically that offense is going to put up 35 plus against the 85 Bears, against anybody. And then on defense, Bosa,
that's the one thing.
Warner, Greenlaw, if they're healthy.
Philly's defense, I did not realize how bad it was, especially the back seven.
Mm-hmm.
The Kyle Shanahan, as your brother would know, Seattle, if you don't have good linebackers, you're going to be in a bind all day. And I believe Philly's 3 main linebackers yesterday were all cut by Philly at one point this season.
Right. They had some injuries at the linebacker position, and it showed.
Yeah, Zach Cunningham was out. Obviously, Shaq Leonard didn't play, and he signed today. And then Nakobe Dean's also out. They were lost in the secondary.
Last week, we were mildly surprised that the Niners were 2.5 3-point favorites, and we're like, should that line have been 8.5?
It's always so hard because again, I never want to be wrong and sad. But like I wish I would have said like I think they're gonna blow them out. I really like Phillies. Like they're like a surprising loss. Like Philly's 29th in the league in pass defense.
Mm-hmm. And you can only chalk some of that up to they're always ahead in games or whatever. They're just a bad unit. Like, I think Kirk threw for over 400 against them in week 2.
And we'll see this week because pressure's on Dak in Dallas because they should light them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking. Oh no, that's what I wanted to say. People say too, like the Niners, like have so many stars, they're top heavy. You know who I also love on this freaking team? Juwan Jennings is a damn good third receiver.
Yes.
And like Elijah Mitchell was on this team when they went to the NFC title game a couple years ago, like as a starting running back. Like Elijah Mitchell's still good when he's healthy and playing.
Yeah.
And because he doesn't play very much, he's been healthy. And like their third running back, JP Mason's averaging over 5 yards a carry. Like they've played with multiple offensive line. This team, again, like obviously injuries, like if you lose one of these guys, like it's going to be harder. But I mean, there's only so many ways I could say it. Like there was a play. There was a play. Obviously, the thing that happened with their head of security guy and Greenlaw, who Greenlaw is an absolute walking 15-yard penalty. I don't blame this one. Like he already got to 15. Their staffer like can't have that happen. He can't put his finger in your face. Like I either wanted them to both get ejected or preferred neither of them. Like, come on, guys. Like it wasn't like a fight happened. But then Fred's shoe fell off and they played like the next down with like 2 backups. And I'm like, their third and fourth linebackers would start for the Eagles today.
Yeah.
And
it's a wealth of riches. It's unbelievable how well you've played. You got Seattle coming into town next week, 12.5-point favorites. I mean, this is a Seattle team that I think before the season, if you would have lined this game, you probably would have said Niners -4, Niners -4.5, somewhere in that range. It's up to 12.5, and that's without, gigantic injuries for the Seahawks. It just shows how far ahead the Niners are in the power ratings that they make in Vegas, ahead of the second place team, that they rank 12.5 at home against Seattle.
I mean, that is crazy, but that reminded me what I was going to point out to the game yesterday. There was no turnovers either team, and I believe each team had the same amount of penalty yards, like 47, which means like there wasn't like someone fumbled. Like you just got worked. Like
it wasn't that you returned to
like you just got beat repeatedly.
Yeah, like
the two first they go 3 and out. And then the third drive starts with a false start, and it's second. I rewatched it. It was 2nd and 15 from like our own 9. I'm like, this is what is going on. And then boop, 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 got the drive going with a couple, passes to like Ayuk and Kittle and stuff. And then after that, it was 6 straight touchdown drives of at least 75 yards. I think they had 75, 77, like 85, 90. And it's like, that's the crazy thing. It's like I remember when we went to the Super Bowl, we beat the Packers on Sunday night and like whooped them, and then we played them in the NFC title game. And all week people are talking like that's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. Like we'll regroup and be better. Like Rodgers, like no way Rodgers loses to Jimmy freaking Garoppolo again, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, they didn't get better players on defense. Like it's the same.
Mostert ran for 9,000 yards.
Yeah, I just all week I'm just like, I mean, yeah, of course the Niners could lose, but like I'm just looking X's and O's like how? I mean, the only possible way is like, Rodgers plays a Hall of Fame, playoff game, which, hot take or maybe it's cold take. He doesn't have too many of those in the playoffs.
No.
At least, a long time. This is kind of the same thing. If they do meet again, whether it's in Philly or that's the thing if I'm Philly. Because after yesterday, you start to believe like you yourself start to believe like did we win last year? Like it's like everything the Niners like, oh, we would have beat them and we would have beat them handily. Mm-hmm. It was again cold weather in Philly, and it's like if they meet again, I'm just like maybe Shaq Leonard makes a huge difference, but there's a reason why he was cut. If he's so good, why did he get cut?
Yeah. Yeah, Brian Dawkins ain't coming through that door. It's a tough spot for Philly. We'll talk about their game at Dallas next week, which all of a sudden becomes, after this game, probably the second biggest regular season game of the year. That one will basically decide the NFC East, you would think. We'll get to that one later, as that one's on Sunday Night Football. So, yeah, Niners probably should roll against Seattle next week, get to 10-3, wrap up the division. If the Rams lose and the Niners win their game, they should wrap it up with 4 weeks to spare. So good times in Santa Clara, fighting for that 1 seed. Got to watch those Detroit and Philly games. Vikings were on a bye. Still no word yet on whether it's going to be Dobbs or Mullins or Hall who's going to start coming out of the bye. We're going to Vegas. We got to make a statement. Jefferson's got to come back, and we got to win. Loss here could kill the playoff hopes and boost Green Bay and the Rams, who both won in crazy games. We had Kansas City last week. We thought that was going to be a KC roll. Was not at all. Jordan Love's actually looked pretty good. The Rams looked really good in their game against the Browns. We'll talk more about that later. But looking at next week for the Vikes, I mean, the line opened at 1. It's already moved to 3 in some places, so people are betting on the Vikings. I'm a little worried about this one. I'm also worried about the game the week after when we play at Cincinnati, which I was like, hey, that'll be an easy one. Not with Jake Browning playing like the second coming of Joe Montana tonight. So looking pretty crazy there for the Vikes. We'll see how that goes. I thought about maybe putting them in there in the picks of the week at -1, but now that it's at -2.5, -3, I'll stay away from that one. Come on, Vikes. Come on, Dobbs. Whoever starts. Come on, Jefferson. Give us a W. We need it bad. We got to talk about Thursday Night Football. Man, really? You were saying before the pod, Al Michaels might just pretend he has COVID. Like, this is the lowest total in an NFL game since, I believe, the early 1990s. It's 29.5 for New England at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh favored by 5.5. Why is Bill Belichick still around? Like, time to go, buddy. Like, no disgrace if you were to resign now. Like, these games at 2-10 going into Pittsburgh with a total of 29.5, like, kind of disgusting to see him going out like this. You're right. We don't need to talk too much about that one. Let's talk about the Rams at Baltimore. Obviously, you'll be watching this one because you can clinch the division with a Rams loss and a win against Seattle. Baltimore's favored by 7. I think Baltimore's going to cruise in this one, but from what you saw for the Rams last week, I'll talk about that game as well because I was there. Are you thinking that this is a live dog there with the Rams, or is this one where Baltimore should cruise off the bye?
I think both things could be true. I think the Rams are healthy, especially offensively. I mean, they can move the ball. I mean, Matthew Stafford could still sling it. They got 2 really good wide receivers. I mean, Cooper Kupp. I feel like people have kind of forgot about Cooper Kupp. And then Luka Doncic is still catching balls. And
Tyron Williams has been really good.
Yeah, but going to Baltimore and facing Lamar Jackson, who has, I think, only lost 1 game in his career against the NFC.
There it is. That's why I'm picking Baltimore.
They're no chance.
Looking at that, so you're a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast, playing a 10 a.m. game against a John Harbaugh coach team that's going to be super buttoned up, off a bye against Lamar, who's 18-1 against the NFC. Everything in the world says pick Baltimore here. I like them -7. We'll talk about that later in the picks of the week. Big fan of the Baltimore -7 line there. Jacksonville plays at Cleveland. Jacksonville was favored by 3. However, that game is now off the betting board because of the Monday Night Football injury to Trevor Lawrence. You said you just saw on your phone as we were starting recording that it is a sprained ankle. So obviously he'll be very unlikely to play in this game. I want to talk a little bit about the game I was at yesterday. First of all, SoFi Stadium.
Just to finish that, yeah. Trevor Lawrence, sprained ankle, according to Shefty.
Okay, so if Shefty says it, it's got to be true. So I would think that's at least 3-week injury, but there's no way in hell he's playing next week. They're going to Cleveland. Being 8-4 now after that loss to Cincy, they've only got a game lead over Indy and Houston. And from what I saw from Cleveland yesterday, Flacco wasn't half bad. I was at the game SoFi is freaking amazing. I had great seats. It was so cool to see that place. It's got to be the biggest stadium I've ever been in. And I went to Barcelona to watch Barcelona versus Real Madrid, and that stadium holds over 100,000. And I felt like that stadium was so small compared to SoFi, which is just a monstrosity. And it was just awesome. It was a great experience. But my takeaways were the Rams offense is actually really freaking good. The defense is kind of suspect. And hey, Flacco wasn't that bad. I think the Browns will be live for this game against Jacksonville, whatever the line is. I think Cleveland is the side I would back here just because they can run the ball, they can rush the passer. We'll see how that goes. That's a pretty big one in the early slate. And then let's talk about Indy at Cincy. Indy's favored by 1. That was 3.5. It's moved down to 1 because holy shit, Jake Browning. What a game on Monday Night Football.
Like you said, he made himself a lot of cash. The numbers say he dominated, and the eye test said he looked like he'd been doing this for a decade.
Yeah.
Like just sit there in the pocket, boop, boop, left, right, over the middle.
Made the right decision every time, the whole game.
Yeah. He was, you kind of, some of these backup quarterbacks, you're like, why is he on the team? Like you just don't even know. You just like, does he just really know the scheme and can, like, I don't know, is he just buddies with the starting quarterback? Like, not saying that this is with Jake Browning, but just even CJ Beathard, I'm like, hey, dude took some hits, behind our offensive line when we were a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, respect to you, CJ Beathard. But then I was like, is that the best you, like, Trevor Lawrence goes down and you're putting all your faith in him? Like, but hey, he was,
CJ was not bad, but Browning was the story.
Yeah, but the same thing with Browning. I'm like, I don't even know. And
former Vikings practice squad cut Jake Browning out of Washington. We clearly didn't think he was good enough to back up Kirk Cousins. Clearly, he's good enough to back up Joe Burrow.
But again, like, that's what's so great about, like, that's what makes the NFL so great is like, there's so many of these stories, like cut. It's like, oh. Like, it's like Joe Burrow's like up there with like a Giannis or like Jokic and Embiid in the NBA. And it's like that guy gets hurt and like the new player has to come in, like the backup center. You're just like, we are so screwed.
Yeah,
like,
you go from winning 60 games to winning like 20.
Forget the actual like game though. Like, as a fan, you're like, refund my ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this one, you're probably like, I wish I was seeing Joe Burrow, but like, let's see what Jake Browning. It's like, oh. Like, as like an impartial fan of this game, I'm like, this is a good game. Like, this is entertaining.
He played well. He's working with a hell of an offensive team. He had Chase, Higgins, and Boyd all healthy. He had Mixon healthy, and that new running back backing up Mixon was also really good in this game. So it was like, okay, he has a wealth of riches on the offensive side. Granted, the Cincy defense didn't do too well, but I mean, like I was saying before, Browning probably got himself another 5+ years in the league as a backup or a fringe starter on that performance alone, because you don't throw for 354 with almost a perfect passer rating in the NFL on the road against a first-place team and not put people on notice. Could be another Minshew story.
I know Trevor got hurt, but like, he was kicking their ass when Trevor was in the game.
Out of nowhere, too. Jacksonville was favored by 10 in this one. And it was just from the get-go, you could tell. Since he was live, Browning had prepared really well for this game. He wasn't great last week against Pittsburgh, but after this, I'm like, oh, God, when the Vikings come to town in 2 weeks, that's no longer a tap-in.
I think they said it was the big, like, first Monday night game in Jacksonville in a long time. And
12 years.
12 years, yeah. They ate a shit burger today.
And now they
to lose your quarterback.
They were thinking 1 seed. They were thinking, hey, we can leapfrog Baltimore or Miami. Now it's like, can you even win the division with a 1-game lead and your quarterback has a sprained ankle? Tough times there in Duval County. Detroit -3 at Chicago. Detroit beat New Orleans. We bet on New Orleans in that one and lost by 0.5 point. We had them +4.5. They lost by 5. Big takeaway from that one was, what we keep saying about Detroit's defense is so true. They gave up 28. I think they probably could have given up more in that game. Winston came in for an injured Carr and promptly turn the ball over. So
I was watching it being, the rooting interest with the Niners, and Jameis Winston is an experience.
he's all vibes. The touchdown he threw was deflected by a defender right to his.
I think he'd be cool to hang out with, but I don't want him as my quarterback.
No. He gives the ball to the other team way too much. He makes some explosive plays. He's like Black Fitzpatrick. That's what I've been saying for years. Is like the guy chucks it and ducks it. He's going to turn it over a lot, but he's got some kind of magic that makes shit happen. But I mean, they've given up 28 to the Bears, the Saints, and the Packers in the last 3 weeks, and in the Packers' case, even more than 28. So it's like the Lions are 9-3. They're tied with the Niners. They're one game behind the Eagles, and they feel like a team that has just an atrocious defense. So I really can't believe they're favored by only 3 at Chicago. Theoretically, this should be 6.5 or more, but the Vegas line makers are seeing what we're seeing. Detroit cannot stop anybody.
No. And if they were playing any team with worth a score kind of on offense, the Saints got to be one of the most disappointing teams. My boy in our podcast namesake, Jimmy G, has been relegated, but Derek Carr looks awful when he's even in, and he's I feel like he's getting knocked out of like 4 games this year.
This version of Derek Carr kind of reminds me of late career Sam Bradford, where his completion percentage is super high because all he does is check down every freaking play. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, but I think it was like 21-0 or something, like when you 5 minutes into the game, and then it was like the Detroit just couldn't put him away. Yeah,
it was 21-0. Then it was 28-24, like almost immediately. I was like, how the hell did that happen? And you look at the stats, it was like the Niner game. It was like 75-yard score, 75-yard score, 82-yard score. You're like, that defense has major problems. So something to watch as we go forward with the Vikings loss against the Bears and then Detroit's win against New Orleans. They basically wrapped up the division at this point. I think they only need to win 2 more games to clinch it. So Detroit is going to win the division. But for Niners and Eagles fans looking at, hey, who are we going to play in the second round if we get there? It's probably going to be the Lions. And I mean, the Niners probably could name their number if they played the Lions in their current state. So interesting to watch going forward. Tampa Bay, Atlanta, and Carolina, New Orleans. So interdivision matchups in the South. Not a lot to talk about there. One of those teams is going to win the division. Probably Atlanta right now. We'll see if Tampa can eke out a win there. Atlanta's favored by 2.5 and New Orleans by 5.5, both at home against their division opponents. I want to talk about Houston -6 at the Jets. I lean Houston there. Can we please stop with the Aaron Rodgers is coming back thing? I am so tired of reading article after article about this. Like, he's clearly doing this so that he can get attention. He has no intention whatsoever of playing this year. If he does, then he never had a torn Achilles to begin with. It was misdiagnosed. This whole story is just ticking me off to no end. Like, let Jets fans just mourn this shit taco of a season and just, I mean, stop with this. Aaron Rodgers is ridiculous. Poor Robert Saleh.
That's one thing you say, but I'm also going to say the Jets are terrible.
Oh,
like
atrocious.
Like someone was saying it, like, even if Rodgers was healthy, like, was this really going to be anything? I know their quarterbacks have been terrible, but that's part of building a team. That you trade for Rodgers, you get his buddy, Hackett, coordinator job, and
get Lazard and Randall.
Yeah,
Cobb.
Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb should not be in the NFL. Like at this point, sorry, decent career, good career, but Alan Lazard, was he a healthy scratch? I saw.
Yeah. Unbelievable. The whole Jets situation, we'll get into it when we get to the bum of the week, but people always are talking about, Saints, Raiders, certain teams are the biggest disappointment this year, Bills, whoever. I mean, you got to put the Jets right up there, even with the Rodgers injury. Like, they are on a historically bad offensive pace, and it's like, at a certain point, like, I know they want Rodgers back next year, but how can you keep Hackett employed with how awful this has been? The game of the week next week is Buffalo at Kansas City. This line is down to 2.5. It started at 3. Everybody's saying perfect spot for Buffalo coming off a bye. Kansas City's playing like crap. They just cannot score like they used to. These aren't the same old Chiefs. In this spot, do you look at Buffalo, or do you say this is one of those games where Andy Reid's like, hey, we can't be the 4 seed in the AFC, and they put the pedal to the metal?
I really don't know, because on one hand, the Chiefs, like you said, look like a shell of themselves, especially offensively. But I have absolutely no idea what I'm getting with Buffalo. No clue. I don't know emotionally if they're going to be there, because they had their last game. They threw their best right hook at Philly and still lost. And at 6-6, they, I mean, they're still in it. So yeah, and but I don't know. I kind of lean Buffalo. I have no good reason to.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough one.
I just think
they have to have it.
I just think the Chiefs, with the personnel they have and like the coach, or their lack of personnel, especially of it, their wide receivers are just awful. Like, they're not getting any better players, and like their coach is really good. So I feel like if it was going to get fixed, it would have already. I know they had the game against the Raiders, but it's the Raiders. And yeah, I know the Packers played well, but like I mean, it was I can't believe Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs played Jordan Love and the Packers, and it was clearly obvious that the Packers were the better team.
Andy Reid coaching, I mean, it's like, how could that possibly happen? But like I said, these aren't the same old Chiefs. They don't have that explosiveness on offense. Quietly, Travis Kelce is just like not that good anymore. Like, he's one of the top 5 tight ends, but he's not the best. He's not going to be an all-pro. He may not even be a Pro Bowler. Like, everybody wants to talk about him for obvious reasons, but he's had a down year. Like, he has to carry that team as the pass catcher, and he hasn't. It's been like Rashee Rice and Pacheco on the ground that have kept them alive in these games, and Mahomes and his unbelievable talent, but like, they need help there. And if they lose this one, man, all of a sudden you're talking about they're going to be the 4 seed. They're going to have to.
I mean, they're lucky their division is ass.
Yeah. And their division is ass because obviously the Raiders have fallen off, but 2 teams that are playing each other next week, Denver at the Chargers minus 2.5. That's an elimination game after Denver lost last week against Houston. So they're 6-6. The Chargers are 5-7. This is an elimination game. This is Staley's last stand. Broncos got to have it. Chargers got to have it. That'll be a good one to put on in the background while you're watching Buffalo KC.
So Denver's 6-6. So if they win, they'd be 7-6. And if the Chiefs lose to Buffalo,
they'd be
only 1 back.
And the Broncos, I think right now, they split with KC. Yeah. So who knows? I mean, that's pretty crazy, even to think that.
But check this out. I'm just looking at their schedule because I'm like, are the Chiefs are they okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Denver gets the Chargers in Denver, winnable. They go at Detroit, which their defense has a good shot against Detroit's offense. I just don't know if they could score. Well, they should be able to score. Then they get the Patriots, Chargers again, and the Raiders.
It's there for them.
I mean, I don't know what Chiefs. Let me look at the Chiefs. Yeah,
Chiefs
Buffalo. They also
week.
get Patriots, Raiders, Bengals. Okay, never mind.
Chiefs will be all right, but I mean, the 4 seed is what they're looking at right now. Maybe the 3 seed if Jacksonville continues to fall with Lawrence hurt, but like, it ain't going to be the KC Invitational again, and I'm actually kind of excited to see that. It looks like Miami and Baltimore will get to host some playoff games, so thank goodness we'll get a little bit of variety there in the AFC. There's the Monday night doubleheader with Tennessee and Miami, and then Green Bay at the Giants, 2 kind of duds of games. I want to talk about Sunday Night Football, probably the second biggest regular season game of the year after the Niners-Eagles last week. Philly at Dallas. I was surprised this line opened Dallas -3.5. Yes, they have all the momentum. Their offense has been playing great, but I think we're putting too much recency bias on this one by having the Eagles, who were 10-2 and were, winning all these close games, and then they get stomped by the Niners. People forget Dallas got stomped even worse by the Niners earlier in the year. So I get it. Dallas has momentum. They've beat up on all these bad teams recently. They gave up 35 to the Seahawks the other day. If I had to bet on this one, I would probably bet Philly with the 3.5. If Philly loses by 3, we win the bet. And I still feel pretty confident in Hurts and that infrastructure to keep that game close. But when you saw that line at 3.5, you had to be thinking, man, they really trust Dallas.
I get it though, because Dallas has not. I think they have not lost at home since week 4 of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said some pretty negative things about Dak and the Cowboys. Just not being, as good as maybe the star on their helmet kind of makes them. Dak Prescott has played very well.
Quick look at the MVP odds. The favorite is Brock Purdy. Second favorite is Dak Prescott.
Well,
Third favorite
it
is
was
Hurts.
probably Dak before the Niner game.
Yeah, which is insane for Dak to be in Week 14 right there for the MVP. Who would have seen that?
I'll have more on that later. But he's been sensational. I think in one pod I said CeeDee Lamb was. I don't know if I said he's overrated. I just thought they had him and Amari Cooper, and I thought Amari Cooper was a better player. I was wrong. CeeDee Lamb is an all-pro this year.
He's been great.
Dallas's offensive line can hold up against Philly's front. The thing that I guess that would concern me if I'm Dallas, Seattle hadn't scored an offensive touchdown in 7-8 quarters or something, and Seattle went up and down the field on them in Dallas.
From the get-go, too, from the second play of the game.
So what is that about? Earlier in the season, Niners Cowboys, we were talking 2 elite defenses, and then I know injuries have happened, but I'm confident Philly can obviously score against Dallas, and I'm confident. Philly's going to be fine; they'll show up. But this is the moment Dak can it's not a playoff game, but it's pretty damn close.
It reminds me of last year's game between Philly and Dallas. That was, I believe, week 16. Hurts was hurt, so it was Minshew. And even though Dallas won the game, they gave up 34 to the Eagles. So I expect this to be an extremely high-scoring game, and I think Philly will keep it close. But you're saying, with Dak playing the way he is right now, it's almost a guarantee that Dallas will put up a ton of points.
I think, like you said, I think they both do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I have a little bit more confidence in Philadelphia if it's a close game.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the Niners game. If Philly and the Niners played a close game, I'd feel really confident I was Philly, because the Niners have kind of struggled in close games. The Minnesota game was close and we lost. The Cleveland game was close and we lost. The Niners are, they're Mike Tyson. They will knock you out. And if they don't, kind of like Buffalo, but way, way, way more consistent than Buffalo. And so I could see Dallas blowing Philly out. I really could. But do I think it'll happen? No, I don't. And if it's a close game and it gets to, all the chips on the table in the fourth quarter, come on, Dak. Because I thought he played really well in Philly.
Right.
But you didn't win.
Yeah, his big size 13 foot was just out on the line. Otherwise, they would have won that one too. So, I by the way, I'm switching my pick. I had Philly plus 3.5 in one of my picks of the week, and I'm switching it to the over when we get there. So, you talked me off of that one. I do, like you said, these are two defenses that are nowhere near as good as the media makes them out to be, and two offenses that are every bit as good as what we've seen in the last few weeks. So I think Philly will go up and down the field on them. I think Dallas will go up and down the field on Philly. This has all the makings of one of those classic regular season games, like maybe that Rams Chiefs game from several years ago where it was 54-51. This is going to be a good one. I'm excited for it. It's about time we had one of those ultra marquee Sunday Night Football matchups. So looking forward to that one. Let's get to your Jack and the Bum of the week. A lot of candidates this week. As always, Belichick is in there. Rivera's in there. They always are, and they always will be as long as they're employed. Belichick scored 0 points in a home game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Good job by you. Ron Rivera gave up 45 to the Dolphins. Basically, right out of the gate, Miami was just like, oh, this is how you're going to cover Tyreek Hill. And he got I think he had 3 catches for 133 and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. Great defense there, Ron. He's taken over the play calling. Good work by you as well. Robert Saleh's on here. I mean, his team is a tire fire. It can't all be, oh, Rodgers got hurt. Like, they've been bad every year that Robert Saleh's been the coach there. We don't want to say it. By the way, I found out this week he has 7 kids. Joey, if you had 6 more kids than you had now, do you think you'd be good at your job?
Oh, no.
Like, I saw that and I was like, no wonder.
Going off on a little tangent here, but like the people who want like big families and stuff, I mean, I just can't even think about it financially. It just doesn't compute. But like, your time is so like allocated like way too many places, and it's like, to me, it's borderline like reckless.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe if you are like, what is it like? Phillip Rivers or whatever has got like a billion kids.
9 kids.
Well, he's loaded. Okay, fine. But even like if I'm like kid number 8, like how much time are you spending with me? Like, or I'm kid 4, or like you just don't just, whether you have 1 kid or 0 kids or 15 kids, there's still only 24 hours in a day.
Right.
So
I saw that and I was like, no wonder that, I mean, how can you possibly give that kind of effort at home and then also that kind of effort on for the team on the field? So like, when I saw that, I was like, that kind of explains why they just have flat out sucked all of the last 3 years. Like, love the guy. He should probably stick to coordinating defenses. So he gets his first appearance on the Jack and the Bum of the Week nominee list. Eagles defense, for obvious reasons, they gave up 6 straight 75-plus yard touchdown drives to the Niners. Probably more on the Niners just being fantastic than the Eagles being bums. And then I put the Chiefs on there for that dud on Sunday Night Football. But you're going with a Hall of Fame head coach.
And it's not Belichick. Honestly, I could change this segment from Jack and the Bum to like, are we picking Belichick this week or not segment? Because, boy, kind of, you could play him, Ron Rivera too, like you
every week.
I really could have put Saul on here because the Jets are a joke. I don't want to, but I might have to if it happens, another time. Yeah, but no, Jack of the Bum of the Week this week for me is my coach of the year pick preseason, Mike Tomlin. The Pittsburgh offense is a horrible watch. Kenny Pickett got hurt, but still, like, you can't trash Kenny Pickett and then Mitch Trubisky comes in and it looks, worse. To give up 24 points to the Arizona Cardinals, to lose to Jonathan Gannon at home. I don't know if they took the bus to Pittsburgh or if they walked or whatever it was, but they took the right mode of transportation. And yeah, they just
mollywopped them from the minute the game started. Arizona was better.
Yeah, I don't know, just big picture, like Tomlin's one of those coaches, like, you can talk about this with players too, like, you kind of get rewarded. He's like Mr. I haven't had a losing season. And it's like, okay, well, you're not going 12-4 or 12-5 every year. Like, when was the last time Pittsburgh won a playoff game?
2014.
A decade. So
the last time
it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. This isn't the Detroit Lions. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The last time they had an important playoff game that they hosted, 2017, they hosted the Jaguars after getting a first-round bye, and they got beaten by Blake Bortles. It has been a long time since Tomlin's been like a very good head coach.
Yeah, I mean, he's good NFL head coach. He's really good, really good. But when you consistently like have the same problem and you don't fix it, that's on you. And no different than like Sean McDermott. Like they just haven't had a running game in like ever. Like, that's partly on you. I know, and it's all these defensive coaches. The offensive guys have a more, willingness to coach the other side of the ball. I know specifically with the Niners, Kyle Shanahan invests a lot into his defense, the coaching staff, the players, everything. And like Tomlin, granted, Antonio Brown was a nutcase, Le'Veon Bell, but like the player, like where are these players? He's not the GM, but I mean, I have a hard time thinking Tomlin reports to anybody in that building other than the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, they got worked by the Arizona Cardinals at home.
A team that's like actively trying to get a better pick next year, and they still lost by 2 touchdowns at home. Tomlin coach, he's one of those coaches who, at this point in his career, he's a guy who gets the best out of mediocre talent. Like he will take a team that should be 6-11 and get them to 9-8 or 10-7. But if your goal is to win the Super Bowl, he's not a coach that you would put at the top of your list because he hasn't had a team that's been Super Bowl caliber in a decade. Like when they lost to the Pats in the AFC Championship, I think it was 2014. That was the last time they had a real chance to win the Super Bowl. That was 9 years ago. Like Mike Tomlin, about time to turn things around there. He needs either a franchise quarterback or a big, expensive hire at offensive coordinator, or it's going to be the same old year in, year out. So there it is, Mike Tomlin, Joey's Jacking the Bum of the Week for NFL Week 13. Let's go to my You Like That picks of the week. I'll make it short and sweet this week. 2-3 last week, 36, 26-3 overall for the season. 3 straight weeks where we haven't been doing too well. We were at one point 15 games over. Now we're only 10 games over. We absolutely have to get back on the winning track here, and I feel confident about these picks, especially my number 1 pick, Baltimore -7, for the reasons I laid out earlier. Lamar Jackson against the NFC, Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh with extra rest, the Rams traveling West Coast to East Coast to play a 10 a.m. game. Everything in the world says Baltimore -7. I like Indy -1 at the Bengals. I thought Browning was awesome today. I think he comes back to earth next week. And Indy's just been playing really well. Shane Steichen looking for that Coach of the Year nod there. So I look at Indy there. Carolina, New Orleans over 38. Carolina's defense is just flat out bad, and New Orleans has given up a surprisingly large number of points for having a defensive head coach in the last few weeks. So I like the over 38 there with a low total. I'm going Detroit -3. It worries me because of their defense, but if you told me that the Lions would be 9-3, the Bears would be 4-8, and the Lions would be only 3-point favorites on the road against Justin Fields and Matt Eberflus, I'd be like, give me that 3 points all day. And then Philly, Dallas. I was going to take Philly here +3.5. I'll take Philly, Dallas over 52 after Joey convinced me that thing is going to be a high-scoring affair. So there's your picks for Week 14 in the NFL. We are going to go Baltimore -7, Indy -1, Carolina, New Orleans over 38, Detroit -3, and Philly, Dallas over 52 on Sunday Night Football. Joey, the floor is yours. You've been wanting to talk about this all year. Your feels great, baby. Your wildest take you feel best about currently. It isn't that wild of a take, but it's your boy.
Yeah, I don't know if I felt this way all season. Definitely now, again, it's one of those things I wish I spoke up earlier, but I don't want to be wrong and sad. But what I feel pretty great about is Brock Purdy winning the NFL MVP, but I don't think he will for reasons that I just don't understand. Like if you want to vote somebody else, like fine, no problem. I mean, there's plenty of candidates. Like I'd have no problem. Like people, if I had a vote, if I didn't vote Brock Purdy, I probably would vote Tyreek Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's on pace to have 2,000 yards. I mean, just a monster season.
Mm-hmm.
And because the other candidates, right, arguably right now are Dak and Jalen, who Brock Purdy, I mean, it's a team sport, but dominated. In those 2 games, 8 touchdowns, 0 picks, like
87-29 final score.
Yeah, and like here, the things that bother me the most are like the reasons why people use like to not vote for him. Like if you think someone else is better, fine. But they say Brock Purdy has so many of these great players. Who the fuck is Jalen Hurts playing with? Like who's
AJ
Dak
Brown,
playing with?
Devontae Smith,
Like
Dallas Goddard,
like
Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey.
like okay, um, like I hate that reason. Like it's a crime that he's playing with these on this team. Well, they want him. I mean, how many players on the Niners talks like, oh, Purdy, if he was here, like Purdy's our guy. Like, oh, we saw like day one training camp. Let's see how I can play. Okay, well, if they think that, then it's got to mean something. And then the other one that bothers me is they say like the yak yards, right? He just throws a bunch of screen passes to Debo, and he boop, boop, boop. We saw it yesterday. Someone put up a stat today. I don't know if you saw it, but his percentage of yards that come after the catch is like 48.6. Do you know who that's lower than? Mahomes, who won MVP. Rodgers, who won MVP. It's lower than like all of them in the last 4 or 5 years. The only one it's not lower than was Lamar, who was at like 43 or something, which I was like, that's why he was, I believe, unanimous that year. I mean, he had an unreal season. But so like, don't tell me he's not pushing the ball down the field. I think he's first in yards per attempt. He's first in QB. He's first in passer rate. Like, what are we doing?
Yesterday, he played against the best team in the league heading into that point, the 10-1 Eagles. Against the Blitz, he went 10 for 10 for 213 and 3 touchdowns. Like, who does that? I don't think any other QB in the league does that.
You want to say it's Kyle Shanahan? Like Mahomes doesn't benefit from Andy Reid? Like Matt LaFleur clearly can coach. Maybe he's not a Hall of Famer, but Rodgers has him. Dak's got McCarthy, who's won a Super Bowl. Like, I mean, I think Sirianni and his staff kind of got worked yesterday, but I mean, been to a Super Bowl. The only reason why they're not going to give it to him is like, we just can't believe that is really the NFL MVP, Mr. Irrelevant, because that feels like a bigger deal than Rudy.
Yeah.
And I was watching I saw Rich Eisen today. He was like, he looks like Bambi with fangs. And he dresses like he's going to home ec class. And it just, what is the reason? Like, it just, if he doesn't get it, and like, if he doesn't get it and it go, I saw too, sorry, last thing, I wanted to say this when we're talking about the Dallas Philly game. We talk about the stats and everything because it's a team game. Like, Niners crushed Philly and Dallas, but the Niners beat them. I'm not going to say Purdy beat Dak. Played better. Purdy beat Jalen. Played better, but like, they're not going head to head. It's not like tennis. Dak and the Cowboys have not beaten a team this year with a winning record?
They're 9-3. All 9 wins against non-winning teams. It's unbelievable.
And look at what forget the Niners. Look at what Purdy did against Dallas, against Philly, against Jacksonville. And I know he had that 3-game stretch in the middle where they lost 3. But I really believed, other than the Cleveland game, which that game had a game-winning drive if they make the kick. Probably played his worst game as in his career. I thought he played very well against Minnesota until fourth quarter. He got concussed apparently, and after that, he just he threw twice to the same guy, Bynum. And I thought Cincinnati, he played well. He had a couple like just horrible turnovers. And who also has a couple horrible turnovers? Dak and Jalen.
Yeah.
Like, the only reason I can think you wouldn't get it, or that you wouldn't vote for him, is like, it's just, I can't believe that this guy who should be doing my taxes or something, like,
late round draft pick, undersized, not as mobile as you would hope to have as an NFL quarterback, 17-4 in his first 2 seasons. Everybody says it's a product of the coaching. Goes on to win 2 playoff games as a rookie. This year he's an MVP candidate. Who does that sound like to you? I mean, if I say all those things, who does that sound like to you? Because only one name comes to mind for me.
Tom Brady?
Yes. I mean, who else has been, a 6th or 7th round pick, comes into essentially a super team with an elite defense, goes 17-4 in his first 21 career starts, wins a couple playoff games. He's going to be either the 1 or 2 seed again this year. He's going to be an MVP candidate, and he's only 23. Like, who does that? I'm looking back at history. Like, it took Kurt Warner until he was like 29 to start doing this kind of stuff. A lot of these guys. I mean, Dan Marino was a number 1 overall pick. These guys who have massive success in their first or second season. Ben Roethlisberger did this. I think he went 13-0 in his first season as a starter in 2004, and then lost in the championship game there. Like, the comparisons are only Hall of Famers at this point, is the point I'm making. Like, he has reached a whole nother level now than I think he was even going into the season, being, I think he was 8-1 as a starter, but postseason and regular season last year, and that one loss was an injury. So, like, he's reached new heights. I cannot believe it.
I can't either. It's a movie. It really is. This is going to be a movie, especially if he wins MVP, and God forbid he wins the freaking Super Bowl. Like, even Walt Disney,
he has roommates. He's making $700,000 a year.
Yeah, he's basically poverty out here in San Jose. So, I mean, like, it's a story. Like, even Walt Disney's like, boy, that's far-fetched. Like,
it's like Iowa State, man.
But it is. But that's why, if you want to put Tyreek, no problem. You want to put, I mean, really, I don't think you can give it to another quarterback other than him, unless something happens the next month.
He has been better on the whole than Mahomes this year, Lamar this year, Hurts this year. Prescott has great stats, but as you said, 9 wins against non-winning teams. Let's see what Dak does against good teams from this point out. Like, right now, he is the favorite, Purdy. He's plus 300. Dak is plus 330. Hurts is plus 330. Mahomes is 5-1. Lamar is 9-1. Tua is 12-1, and Tyreek is 20-1. I'm like, McCaffrey probably should be on that list as well, too. But it's
Tyreek at 20-1 is pretty good odds.
They'll never give it to a wide receiver, even though I believe he is far more valuable to his team than, for instance, like, Jalen Hurts is to the Eagles. Like, right now. Like obviously Hurts is a beast, but like, Tyreek is the most important player on the field every play that he plays.
My reason why I want these certain players, like Purdy, ignoring the fact that he plays for my favorite team, but like the only objective reason I could think you have an argument against him, especially if you vote for another quarterback, is you just don't want to give it to a guy that just seems ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Same with Hill and with Purdy. It's the same case.
Well,
like the
Hill
narrative
too,
says no.
Well, exactly. The narrative to Tyreek, we don't give this to a non-quarterback.
You get the offensive player.
Well, my thing is like, well, that's stupid. Like, I would want Tyreek to win it because, like, if he doesn't win it, like, just make it a quarterback award, or like maybe if like Myles Garrett has like 20 sacks or something. Like, I think it's gone to more like edge rushers than it. I could be wrong, but it's like quarterback and then like pass rushers. This is like the second position historically who won it, which is still like none, or like only a few.
I mean, it's been.
Did I hear today? Is it true? Like that a receiver has never won it?
Never. A kicker has. Mark Mosley in 1982, but not a wide receiver. It's crazy. Like, and that's a different era.
You tell me Jerry Rice didn't win? Like,
insane.
I mean, I know
right?
he didn't, but like.
So like, the most recent examples are Adrian Peterson in 2012. He rushed for 2,000 yards. LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006. He broke the all-time record with 31 touchdowns. The year before, Sean Alexander was the MVP in 2005. He broke the all-time record with 30 touchdowns. It's like, you have to break an all-time record. And that's just the starting point. Yeah.
But it's just
right now I would go Purdy 1, Tyreek 2, just like you were saying. The quarterbacks, nobody's distancing themselves, so you have to give it to the quarterback who has played the best.
This could change easily in 5 weeks. I mean, I hope Purdy doesn't go in the shitter, but maybe he does. And maybe Dak continues and beats Philly, or maybe Jalen, they get the 1 seed, they end up finishing like 15-2, like, okay. But at this particular time, the only reason I could objectively say that you would not vote for Purdy and vote for another quarterback is it's just like, no,
He's
this is
Mr. Irrelevant.
this is
We
not
can't do
happening.
that. Yeah.
Like,
And it's voted on by 50 sports writers.
it's the same thing in like other sports too. Like, it's crazy. Like LeBron's only won like 4, and like he could have won it feels like every year for like 10 years straight.
Mhm.
Like we're getting LeBron fatigue.
Yeah.
Or even like
Eric Rose.
Yeah. Like, was he the best player? I don't think so. Like, luckily hockey really doesn't do that because like it feels like it does go to Connor McDavid pretty much every year. Or most years, but yeah,
It's an incredible conversation. Who would have thought before the season, week 14 pod, we're discussing whether Brock Purdy should be the MVP now that he's, the betting favorite. I mean, like, how crazy is that? What if I told you this, 1 calendar year ago on December 4th of 2022? You'd be like, Purdy wins the 2023 MVP. You'd be like, what?
It's funny you say that. I think the game was today, like a year ago.
Against the Bucks?
No, the Miami one when Jimmy got hurt when he came in.
Yeah. And you were at that game, and you said,
Yeah.
hey, this Purdy might have something.
I like you to tell me like, oh yeah, a year from now, this guy's going to be number 1 favorite for league MVP.
You'd be like, what?
I'd be like, if you want whatever you're on, turn the Xbox off, and like, I don't know if he's got brothers or sisters. I think he's got a brother who I think is a quarterback in Nebraska.
Yes. Yeah. And he's a running quarterback too.
Yeah, I'd be like, and tell your brother to like stop stuffing the ballot box.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, like the only reason I believe that is if it came from a family member who was playing a video game using Brock Purdy on drugs.
Yeah. How is that possible? And yet here we are. It's unbelievable. That's what happens when you beat, a 10-1 team on the road, 42-19, and throw for, 314 yards and have an almost perfect passer rating and have a perfect passer rating against the vaunted Eagles blitz. Like, that was a swan song for him. That was the magnum opus for Deebo Samuel. It was basically a perfect performance for the Niners. We're running a little late here. We started a little late because that football game, that Monday Night Football game just lasted so long. So we're going to cut the pod here. But I think it's good to end it on a high note. Brock Purdy is the MVP favorite. The Brock Hard podcast, it might need to be that going forward. I cannot believe it. We joked about it 1 year ago today that we were going to have to rename it. And now the guy is the MVP favorite. It's just stupefying to say.
Rocky 13, Glock 30, or
Rocky
Glock
Balboa, baby. I cannot believe that this is happening. So next week we got Niners Seahawks, a semi-pod bowl with Evan Seahawks taking on the Niners. Niners should win that one easily, and then the Vikings go to the Raiders. So pretty crazy week next week for those in the pod family here. Thanks everybody for listening as always. We'll be back again next week to recap those games and everything that happens in NFL Week 14. Thanks for listening again to the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. See you next week.